Kevin Delaney coming to you today from my office here in Flagstaff Hill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Just hanging out, having a good time, and I thought that this was a good setting to talk about one of my absolutely favorite topics of all, and that is the topic of pleasure. Pleasure, enjoyment, feeling good as opposed to feeling bad, feeling rotten, feeling awful, feeling terrible. And this would be a good time too to declare my status as a limited hedonist. A limited hedonist. What do I mean by this? Well, hedonism is the philosophy essentially that pleasure is the standard of action. In other words, if it feels good, do it. Now, I'm not a hedonist, and I want to make that clear. I'm not a hedonist. But as much as I'm not a hedonist, I'm even less of a Puritan. Puritanism is basically the opposition to pleasure, the view, the idea that pleasure is somehow inherently bad, inherently wicked, wrong, or at the very least, it's to be regarded as something very, very suspect. You know, if you're having a good time, you're either doing something wrong, or it needs to be justified. That's a very common kind of puritanical idea. It's not that people are completely opposed to pleasure, but pleasure is always to be regarded somewhat as guilty until proven innocent. And I think that's a dreadful, terrible attitude and philosophy to uphold. And I want to make abundantly clear my complete opposition to Puritanism. So if I had to choose between Puritanism and hedonism, I would choose hedonism any day. But I want to stress I'm not a hedonist. The reason I would choose hedonism is because at the very least, the hedonist does uphold what we might call the pleasure principle, the idea that pleasure is important, pleasure is a value, pleasure is necessary in human life. Now, the reality of most hedonists and why I distance myself from hedonists in general is that most hedonists are tremendously unthoughtful people. They're not concerned to live the life of a thinking person. They just act. Hedonism for most people in reality is not an explicit philosophic conviction that they hold. They're just mindless. They just act in the moment, and they just do whatever they feel like with no thought of consequences. And when I say I'm a limited hedonist, I want to first of all make very clear that I'm not a Puritan. I don't believe in Puritanism in any sense of the term. But I do uphold pleasure in a thoughtful, rational kind of way. In other words, if there is no reason in reason why you shouldn't do something, something is harmful, something is going to, bring about pain, destruction, maybe down the road, if there's no reason not to do it and it's pleasurable, then I say basically do it. And more than that, I say it's important to do it. We need pleasure. And there's squirrels up above and they throw things down at me sometimes. Don't worry about them. But if I get bonked on the head, that's what it is. Squirrels are staunch Puritans. They don't like when I talk about this sort of thing. But where was I? Lost my train of thought there. The squirrels, those squirrels are at it again here. But the idea again that Puritanism is the opposition to pleasure, and I uphold what we might call the pleasure principle in life. In other words, pleasure is extremely necessary, extremely important, extremely good. And if you're not experiencing pleasure in your life, if you're not enjoying your life, then what's the point? We don't exist to suffer and die. We live to enjoy ourselves and live our lives to the fullest. That's what I believe. And I was reading an interesting essay by the rather controversial figure Timothy Leary. He said at some point he said 2001. He was writing in the 60s, of course, but he said in the future, the psychologist will be like a bliss expert. Will be a bliss specialist, will be somebody who just totally radiates good vibes, good feelings, and people will come to this person to help them experience happiness, joy, pleasure, And it's just kind of quaint now looking back on 2001. It seems like such a long time ago. And to say the least, I don't think that too many psychologists really see themselves that way. And I don't think that's the general attitude toward psychologists. But my attitude is, why not? You know, why not be a bliss expert? Why not devote your life to good feelings, to feeling good as much as possible? Like I said, as long as there's no hangover, you know, tomorrow, as long as there's no price to pay down the road that's not going to, you know, that's going to wipe out all the benefit, why not? I really don't believe that we're here to suffer and die. I believe that we're here to enjoy ourselves to the fullest, develop ourselves. Now, when I say have a good time, that's something I like to say. I really mean have a really good time. I mean a really, really good time. To me, getting drunk is not a good time. To me, engaging in mindless activities, you know, that's not a good time. What is a really good time to me is engaging in really fulfilling, enjoyable kinds of processes in your life, moving forward in your life, discovering who you are, discovering your talents, your abilities, and of course, using them, making use of them. That to me is what a really good time consists of. Let me just close by saying, when I was 17 years old, there was a friend of mine who was a couple years younger, and she said that she had spent some time thinking about, you know, what is life all about? Basically, what's the meaning of life? What does it all come down to? And she said that she thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and she finally came to the conclusion that the whole purpose of life was fun. Fun. Just try to have as much fun as you possibly can. And I remember at 17 thinking, God, that's so wrong. It can't possibly be what life is all about, just having fun, you know. I didn't know what the answer was. I couldn't have told you an alternative, really, but I certainly knew that it was not fun. The interesting thing is that in the intervening years, more and more and more each year, I come to agree with that idea, that really is what life is all about. Now, you might quibble with the term fun. You might say, well, that's a little bit frivolous. Okay, fine, although I'd have nothing against frivolous fun. Again, what's the harm? If it's not harmful, then have at it, is what I say. But if you widen the term a little bit and you take it to mean in general, again, feeling good versus feeling bad, enjoyment, pleasure, happiness, absolutely, I would say that is what life is all about. I certainly, again, don't agree that we're here to, you know, live this miserable, painful, terrible kind of life. And I don't see any virtue in that, by the way. And I know that's an attitude that a lot of religions have taken, and many people adopt consciously or unconsciously, the idea that suffering is somehow a badge of nobility. I don't agree with that at all. The truth is, any idiot can suffer. It's very, very, very easy to suffer. But to really live an exciting, interesting, beautiful, wonderful, joyous life, that takes some thought. That takes some effort. That's why I say, again, I'm a limited hedonist. I uphold certain ideas of hedonism, but I don't agree with the overall attitude of just live in the moment and have no thought or no concern about what is going to happen down the road. If we're going to really be happy and really have a good time, it does require thoughtfulness, it requires planning, and it requires that we take that long-range view always toward our lives. So those are some thoughts of mine. You can tell me what you think. Leave a comment, and I'll talk to you later.